we get a lot of questions on the Facebook page, on the fan page, emailed in, whatever. And a lot of people ask about symmetrical versus asymmetricals, and they want to know a lot when to use them, how they perform, and it's not a cut and dry black and white situation. Um, it's like a multi-dimensional graph if you looked at it, because you have the amount of lane oil, the amount of dry boards, where they are, the volumes, your ball speed, your rev rate, the style of player you are. So you can't just have a hard, fast rule saying
Uh-oh. We're losing Phil. I'm about to jump in and turn this whole presentation around now. Hang tight, everybody. We'll figure out Phil's issues here. But, yep. I think we're losing Phil.
I don't know what happened. There I am.
Oh, we're back.
I don't know what happened.
I don't know. You plugged in?
That was weird. Yeah, I'm plugged in. Let me just look at something real quick.
All right.
Yeah, I'm on the Wi-Fi. No,
right.
Wait, I'm not. Wait, let me do that. This way I'll make sure we're covered.
It's great.
There we go. Okay, it should be all right.
All right.
So the there is no really hard fast rule, but I put together a little slide presentation to talk a little bit about the differences, the pros and cons, maybe when you should use it and when you shouldn't use it, stuff like that. So let's talk about the pros. Some of the pros for symmetrical, they're more controllable. They have a longer hook window. Nick mentioned that before. The hook window is when the ball comes off the spot, it goes skid, hook, roll. When it comes off of the hook to point, from the skid to the hook, and from the hook to the roll, the longer that segment is, the hook roll segment, the more continuous the ball is. So in the case of a symmetrical ball, it's a longer hook window than an asymmetrical ball. An asymmetrical ball is a shorter hook window. So if you threw an asymmetrical ball, and I'll give you a hypothetical situation, you got plenty of dry boards to the right, you throw the ball to the right as far as you can, and the ball comes back in the flat tens. And that's with an asymmetrical ball. The reason that happened is the ball rolled forward. It sort of lost its rotational energy. Okay, it had transitional and rotational. Transitional was going forward, rotational was going sideways. We'll go off the spot, it began when the two meet together, they roll out. When your rotational and your transitional energy roll is the same, the ball is rolling forward, it's rolled out. Okay, so the symmetrical balls have a longer hook window. It takes a longer time for that to happen. Therefore, it has a smoother transition from skid to hook. Okay, so those are some of the advantages of a symmetrical ball. I'm not going to tell you when you should use it or not. We'll talk about that a little later. With an asymmetrical ball, you have a sharper reaction because of the intermediate differential. It has a shorter hook window. So if you're playing inside and you're not looping it as far, you have a better advantage. You have an advantage with the asymmetrical ball than you will with a symmetrical ball. It's got a quicker transition off the spot. You want a ball to change direction quicker. An asymmetrical ball will do that. And one of the big advantages of asymmetrical is you have a lot of drilling options.
Sure.
You have the dual angles apply. In both cases they do, but they don't have as much influence in the symmetrical. The drill angles, you have your vertical angle. All of these, your options are there, so you can really tune that in. With symmetricals, it's pin to pap. Mm-hmm. Basically, that's all there really is to that.
And VAL.
And VAL, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, with the no balance hole rules, I think a lot of the symmetrical layouts that people used to really like, they don't like them as much anymore.
Right.
Because that pin down, hold down, that hole in the bottom did quite a lot for that mid lane read and creating that sharper motion, shortening up that hook window.
Right.
Whereas now they don't have that benefit. So
yeah. And you got to be able to realize that the hook window, the longer hook window takes it a longer amount of time for that ball to transition.
Mm-hmm.
It
can
so
still it can still be very angular.
Yeah.
But what I found is like when you see like the huge discrepancy between entry angle versus impact angle, like you see like maybe 3.5, and then it goes all the way up to like 6.5.
Yep.
That's because the ball took forever off the spot. It didn't actually come off the spot super hard. It came off really
Correct.
late. So it's
Yeah.
catching up at the end.
Yeah. And that's a good point, Nick. We really concentrate a lot on that in our videos. We talk about that a lot because balls that are continuous have to have a difference between the entry angle and the hook and the impact angle. There has to be a difference for that, and the impact angle has to be greater, or else the ball is not continuing. But Nick's point is as they get further apart, the ball is taking a longer time.
Right.
Now, that's a good thing if you're going to be playing, more swing, covering a lot more boards. You don't want that ball burning up. So, that's some of the advantage of a symmetrical versus an asymmetrical.
Yeah,
I
think
but
with closed angles, you can get away with it not having a huge entry angle versus the impact because you're
right,
creating more angle starting from further out. But when you start moving in, you're going to need to see a larger impact angle to be able to get through the pins and continue and finish that motion.
right. And that's where
So
asyms come in. If you have to move way in and keep it a little tighter, you got to keep that. You're going to need more flip down lane. It's going to be more quicker off the spot down lane. So the
right.
asyms are good in that spot, and the symmetricals are. That's my favorite ball from playing out or a house shot. I mean, and we'll talk about some of the other parts of it. But when you get to the cons of the two, the symmetrical balls in general have less overall hook. They mostly read mid lane. They're less dynamic, and there's fewer drilling options. When you look at a ball like we talked about a little while ago with a high differential, and I'll talk about diffs in a second, but a high differential balls, they're going to flare a lot, but it's a gradual motion. It's not a quick transition from one direction to the other. So you have less of a dynamic motion with symmetrical balls. Now the asymmetrical, here's some of the cons. They can be very over and under.
Mm-hmm.
You can you miss by one either way, and you can be missing the building. They have a potential to roll forward. So that's where that hook window is short because the ball's so dynamic. If you're not coming off the spot that in the right place on the lane, and that ball has to travel from the break point to the pins further than it was a little bit earlier, then you're going to have a problem. That ball could roll forward, and then you're going to be flat corner pins and 8-10s and whatnot. And here's the other thing: they're very sensitive to rev rate and speed changes. So, so if you're thinking about and you're not really accurate with your speed and rev rate, much less directional challenged, you can have a problem with an asim. It's going to amplify all your mistakes.
Mm-hmm. I had a question. Is it normal for the trash man to come at 2:32 in the afternoon?
Absolutely. No, but they normally come at
Yeah,
2:35.
it's very unusual.
Very unusual. They normally come at 2:35.
If anybody catches that reference, which is kind of like a reference, but different scenario there.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, so you have some pros and cons. Again, there is no steadfast rule. I mean, whatever works for you is what you have to be trying to do.
Yeah.
But I want to talk 1 second about the differentials and where they come from. So in a symmetrical ball, you have an X and Y axis, and the difference between the two is what we call a differential. If you have a 2.50 and a 2.52, your differential is 0.20. It's pretty simple. Subtract one from the other. And obviously, the wider that is, the more difference in there. And subtract the two is a greater differential.
Double checking your math.
Okay.
Yeah, it checks out. Go on.
Thanks. 0.020. That's why I did easy math. So there's only two. There's an X and a Y axis, and that's your RGs, your XRG and your YRG. Now, in a asymmetrical ball, there are actually three axes or axi. The X, Y, and then the Z, because the shape is not the same on the one axis. Okay, so that's why it's called an asymmetrical ball. So the difference between X and Y is the total diff, and the difference between the Y and the Z is the intermediate diff. And the higher the intermediate diff is, the more tendency that ball will have to roll forward when it starts to hook too much.
I remember a while back we tested some radical balls in a special core where
Right.
the intermediate was almost higher than the total
Yes.
differential.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
at that point, I mean, obviously those balls didn't make it to market. You know, the bowling balls
But it was a
flared.
learning process. That's why we did it.
Learning process for sure. But yeah,
Yeah.
the motion we saw was very confusing. You know,
Right.
it's obviously
Right.
flared a lot and it revved up fast.
And that's what happened.
Yeah, but it reached its point of, you know, rolling forward and
Yes.
did just that. So,
If the
you know,
pins are at 35 feet, that would have been a great ball.
yeah. So if the intermediate's higher than the total, then would that make the intermediate the RG min though, or no?
No, it's
Okay,
the X and Y.
excellent.
So that'll always be the intermediate if
Got it.
it's the Y and the Z. So, but again, depending on the player, I mean, a speed dominant player could benefit from a higher intermediate diff.
Absolutely.
A rev dominant player would not. Now,
And your
add,
environment too.
right, add another dimension to that. If we have a rev dominant player who's also high speed, he could use that high intermediate diff ball
Sure.
because the speed will overcome it. So again, you see, you're starting to paint different pictures, and every scenario is different. So there is no steadfast rule. Somebody can't tell you, oh, you should be only throwing, you
should only use
intermediate.
these. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't. Like for me, I don't do well with asymmetrical balls.
Right. Yeah, your ball speed isn't quite up there.
My ball speed is not up there.
Which we're gonna test when you come out here.
No, we're not.
We're
But
gonna get you on
anyway,
Specto.
Spectre. Isn't that a Bond movie?
Spectre is. Specto is not.
Oh, I thought we were doing Spectre.
No.
So, when you look at your options, it's really not you should do this or you should do that.
You should have those balls in your bag though, as options.
Yes. And if you realize after a while that you don't throw asymmetrical balls well,
yeah,
and they're not bowling in a lot of tournaments where maybe you wish you had that, you just stick to what you're good at.
Yeah, that's where being reflective after tournaments and after every set, like, okay, well, that didn't really work for me. I'm just going to keep that in the back of my mind. Or, hey, when I really needed, to move in and hook it,
right.
The symmetrical ball just didn't quite turn that corner and get to the pins, but this ASIM did. The bowling balls are so much different. One, even with the crypto boom versus like Katana Assault,
right,
where they're both skid flip bowling balls, but one's symmetric, one's pretty aggressive,
pretty aggressive
ASIM,
right.
And the amount of back end is pretty similar, but just the amount of continuation was very noticeably different. I saw more continuation with ASIMs for myself.
Sure.
From especially from deeper angles.
From deeper angles. And again, in generalization, you look for more continuation, you go to a symmetrical ball because the hook window is longer, but you want more overall hook, you go to an asymmetrical ball because it's going to give you more hook, more dynamics.
Right.
That's just the generalization.
Yeah, and if they were burned up more, because I typically do all my reviews on fresh,
right.
Then I'm probably going to be into those symmetrical balls way later in the block.
Yeah.
But after 5-10 minutes of bowling on a pattern, that's not enough to break it down.
No, and what, it depends on what you bowl on. I mean, people say, well, I bowl tournaments and I bowl house shot. But is your tournament a house shot?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of tournaments are, local events and stuff.
Yeah, where do you bowl where there's no friction? That may be the only time you might need something sharper down lane. But then we'll talk about in the next slide, if you would, Nick, some of the conclusions or when to use them. Symmetrical balls are good on wet dry shots. Because why? Because they don't over and under react. You have an over and under reaction with a wet dry shot. Why do you want to ball it with over and under react? That are amplifying it.
They're good on sport.
They're good on sport shots. Why? Because there's really not a lot of room left to right. You're playing front to back mostly. Unless you throw it hard enough, have an high enough rev rate to keep it online, you're probably going to need something that's got more control, and that would be a symmetrical ball. Now, an asymmetrical ball, you're going to give you more hook. If you're on a house shot that's wide open, meaning if you miss right, it doesn't overhook, and if you miss left, it doesn't overskid. That's a wide open shot. You have plenty of room to hit. You can use an asymmetrical ball, and you'll get more down lane motion and a sharper angle. You get more, and you can also, the ideal time to use it is when you need more back end reaction. But again, like Nick said, you got to have these in your bag. But after a while, if you find out you're dusting off the one ball, it never comes out, look to replace it with a different kind of a symmetrical ball if it's the asim that doesn't come out. And if the symmetrical never comes out and you're only throwing asims, maybe you want to look at a lower intermediate diff asymmetrical ball. And if you want to have an arsenal of asymmetrical balls, that's fine. We have that for you. We have the 010s, the 012s, the 013 intermediates. We have the 2Os, the .020s. We got the 028s. You're getting up to higher intermediate diffs. You can build an arsenal with those three because your reaction of the lower intermediate diff ball is going to be very close to a symmetrical ball without actually calling it a symmetrical ball. Now, on the other side, when you take symmetrical balls, you can go, and my arsenal is built that way for myself personally. I'll have the lowest intermediate diff arsenal ball I can have in my arsenal. Whatever we have that we make that's got a low intermediate diff, I have that ball. I also have a medium intermediate diff, and then I have a higher, but not a super high, but for me, a higher intermediate diff. And that's an arsenal for me. So again, pearl cover, solid cover. All these things come into play. But if you look at the basis of how to build an arsenal with symmetrical or asymmetrical or both, look at the differentials, look at the intermediate differentials. Now, one thing we do at Radical that nobody else does is we do an after drilling sheet. It'll tell you what the intermediate diff on a symmetrical ball is after you drill it.
Yeah, some are more affected than others for sure.
Absolutely right. So you should look at that as well. So, and then in conclusion,
if you bowl on tour, just grab a purple hammer and you don't have to worry about all this.
Unless the PBA says we don't like the purple hammer, but we're going to keep putting shots out when the purple hammer plays and then complain about it.
Or our guys are just that good throwing purple hammer that it doesn't matter what you put out.
The other guys whine about if you didn't do that. Oh, you got to throw a purple hammer. My company doesn't have one.
I forgot my violin. It's too far away today. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. So conclusion, symmetricals, ideal for low rev, low speed players. That's the only time I'm going to say what they're good for sure. A low speed, low rev player should definitely have a couple of asymmetricals in their arsenal because they're not going to force them way in and they're going to keep them online and they're not going to be over and undery and get them into trouble. They're easier to read. You miss left with an asymmetrical ball or for me left, for you guys right, it could go across the lane and you move 3 left with your feet and you could never hit the headpins, one of those. But with a symmetrical ball, it's easier to read. You can make the normal moves and they are more continuous.
Did you just assume everyone in the chat's right-handed?
I just assumed everyone in the chat is right-handed.
Dang. Okay.
Only because and when I die, I want to come back as a righty. This way I could
suck with both hands.
No, then I can just then I can bitch about the left.
Oh wow. It's been eating at you for 40 years, huh?
Oh yeah. No, I always laugh about that. People complain about the left. I'm like, what are you complaining to me for? I didn't do the lanes. I just showed up and paid my money
to the lane man
and took yours.
I didn't do the lanes. The guy I paid did the lanes.
Paid the lane. The guy I paid did the lanes.
Yeah.
Asymmetrical ball. Go ahead.
When you say thank the lane man, literally you thank him with
thank him. Thank the lane man. Asymmetrical balls are stronger motion overall. If you need a lot more hook, you're going to probably get it better with the asymmetricals. It has a lot of drilling options. I mean, if you look at the drill sheets and they tweak them to to the degree when it comes to pin to pap, the drill angle, and the VAL, and I mean you can dial that in as much as you want, and maybe sometimes to the extreme where you're saying will this 45 by 5 by 30
That's
be any
extreme.
different? Well, I'm just saying, and the extremes of that would be 45 by 5 by 28. Would you see a difference?
Yeah.
So you analyze it to the extreme.
Yeah, when you start talking, 5
Yeah.
degree, maybe even
Yeah,
10-degree difference. I mean,
yeah.
for most people, you're not going to see a difference. Oh, what if I go 4.5 versus 4? It's like, okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm fairly accurate about board and a half.
And that's what I was just going to say. If you're not accurate within a board and a half, I'm not thinking you'd be accurate within a 5-degree difference in your
Yeah,
drillings.
doesn't matter. At the end of the day,
It doesn't
just
matter.
like Vince Papali, hey, you spelled my last name wrong. I was like, I'll get
Yeah.
to it, but when
Yeah,
I do, is it going to matter?
Yeah, you're going to be here that long. And then it's got a shorter hook window. Remember that if you're going to try to boom, not the crypto boom an asymmetrical ball, and you don't have the rev rate and the ball speed to do it with it, you're probably going to be flat 10ing.
Or
If
flat
you
7ing.
get back, or flat 7ing, if you get to the pocket.
Stop assuming we're all right-handed. There's lefties in the chat.
Well, how do you know?
Because Justin says I'm lefty. That's how I know.
That's how you know. So Justin, I'm sorry, Justin.
That's how you want. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's sorry, Justin.
Yeah. Somebody said the other day, it sent me an email and said, how come you don't do the throwbot videos left-handed? And I said, just get a mirror, look in the mirror.
It would actually be
what it would look like.
Huge ordeal.
Oh my God.
To actually throw left-handed shots on throwbot. And just starting right off the top is we'd have to drill 2 extra bowling balls.
Right. Right.
Then we'd have to actually physically change his axis rotation, which is a physical mechanical change on throwbot to do it. So I think he's set at 45-degree axis rotation now.
Right.
We'd have to turn it 90 degrees.
Yeah, it's just get a mirror. Looks the same.
Yeah, and we do that for you sometimes, not often.
Yeah, we do it. We have a couple of at least one lefty in there, right? No, two.
We got Wayne Gripsky and you.
Yeah.
But so we do the mirror thing once in a while, but having to go through extra balls drilled and then the mechanical change, like it's not going to work out.
Right.
So that's why we don't do it.
Anyway, that's what we got.
Great presentation on that, Phil.
I hope that was good. I hope you guys, it helped a little. I don't want to get too deep into a lot of stuff because then it's just minutia. You hear it over and over, and a lot of times it don't mean anything. We try to keep it pretty simple here.